Welcome to Pod Strangely Warmed. I'm Daniel Hawkins, and today we are getting ready for back to school. Now, I know it's July, and we don't want to go there just yet, but it'll be here before we know it. Just ask any 12-year-old you know. They will let you know it is coming soon. And to help us here on the pod and in the annual conference get ready for our back-to-school season, we are being joined by some of the best campus ministers the world has ever known. And they'll be here tomorrow. But today, we've got Eddie Kahler at the TCU Wesley Foundation, Reverend Marianne Brown-Trigg from the Denton Wesley Foundation up at the University of North Texas. And I'm just so excited that you guys are here as we get ready to go back to school and move into this season where everyone is starting a new rhythm. I know for you guys, the start of school is a brand new rhythm, and in many ways, you know some of the students you've got coming back in, but one of the unique things about your ministry is it's a brand new start each and every year almost. Eddie, if you'll tell us a little bit about how long you've been at the TCU Wesley Foundation and kind of what does the core of ministry look like at TCU?
Sure. So I started at TCU in 2020. I've been there 3 years now. Finally feel like I've got a little bit of the lay of the land of what's going on. And we're structured sort of as a typical Wesley that you might envision. We have a Wednesday night meal that is our main gathering where churches and small groups and individuals can bring food. We feed roughly around 30 students every week. And after that, we transition into worship where students lead. We'll do communion, break off into conversation groups, and that's the hub of the ministry.
Okay.
But we've got small groups and other, like a freshly first-year student ministry that meets other times during the week, and there's always something going on in addition to that.
Well, very good. I'm glad that you're feeling settled. Starting in 2020 is a heck of an ask for anybody. And so
thankfully, the bar was low and students were happy to be in a room together.
Hey, very good.
Yeah.
Good. It's a win, right? Very good. Marianne, tell us a little bit. How long have you been at the Denton Wesley Foundation, and what does the core of your ministry look like there?
So I came to Denton Wesley Foundation in January of 2021. So I've been there a little bit less time, and I feel like I've been there a lot less time. I call Eddie for help all the time. But we have a Tuesday night worship that is kind of classic, like what a lot of our listeners will probably remember from their college days. We got dinner and worship on Tuesday nights. But where we see most people is our open doors hours on Thursdays. And so we have free coffee, free lunch, free groceries. And people just come hang out between classes and interact with each other and things like that. And then that's where you come if you're just trying to scope out the vibe of the Wesley a little bit. And then from there, we'll get you plugged into worship or our crafting group or Bible studies or things like that.
Nice. As you hinted at, right? Some of us remember college ministry a long time ago, right? I was recently reminded that I'm a geriatric millennial, and that just made my heart sad. But it was 21 years ago that I was a freshman in college, and so it's been a long time. And the Baylor Wesley back in the day, all they did was feed you. Right. If you wanted marginal church lady food, y'all's is good church lady food. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But that was about it. Right. What are some of the differences between what people might expect coming in or things that are unexpected about what you guys are doing as you jump into campus ministry?
Well, just in a broad sense, as I understand it, campus ministry has changed over the decades. There have been times where it was very Bible study, small group focused. Okay. And then there were decades where we went all in on the big worship experience. And I think we're almost at a point now where we're figuring out what's next, right? And so we're always trying different initiatives, like we do a theology on tap group, where students will meet off campus and read through scripture or share current events or their lives. And we're kind of always trying something new, and a lot of it fails, and we keep trying new things because I do wonder what's next. If it's not worship in what it's been known as, what will it be next? And so I know y'all try a lot of stuff too.
Yeah, one of the things I always say is that if it doesn't work in May, we're not going to do it in August. And that means we can say yes in August, even if we're not sure what it'll look like in May. And so, in some ways, we're starting a new thing every school year, sometimes more often than that. But I try to tamp down the enthusiasm a little bit so we can focus sometimes. For me, that's been like one of the things we do differently is instead of me just bringing the whole sermon Then I bring like the scripture and the theology and whatever I want them to take back to their dorm with them that day. But I craft questions, and the students are the ones that bring all the illustrations. So instead of hearing my same 10 stories over and over again over their 4 years, then they bring their own stories and are reflecting theologically themselves. And I'm seeing a lot of that in ways that we're empowering students to lead the ministry themselves, as being something that I think this generation's really hungry for and really responding to, but figuring out exactly the logistics of how to do that every August. It's new every time.
We've spent a lot of time as an annual conference talking about how do we empower emerging generations, how do we disciple emerging generations, and one of the things that I love that you just shared is, right, this is the New Revised Annual version of what you just said, right? This is not youth group for college students, right? Where you hand feed, spoon feed everything, right? You're laying out a point and then saying, where does this meet you? And we're all learning together. At least that's what I heard. And that's beautiful and that's powerful. As kind of our resident experts in meeting emerging generations, is what would you say to those of us who are helping to cultivate maybe those high school juniors and seniors that are about to be young people in your ministries, or integrating back into the life of the everyday ordinary church, some of our mid-20s folks who have been in campus ministry and are finding themselves coming back into this life where they've got jobs and are working through different things and maybe reintegrating within the life of the local church. What are some lessons you guys are learning about kind of raising up leaders while also discipling along the way that might be helpful and fruitful for everybody else in this process?
One word I would say is don't count them out. Don't count them out. One of my favorite kind of studies and research that I've come across, there's a great group called Springtide, and they do research with religion and young people, ages 13 through 25. And what I love to tell folks when I go to visit churches or speak about campus ministry is you may not be seeing them in your church or in your pews. They're not necessarily connected to a faith community, but that they still identify as religious, and they still are interested in faith. Okay. And we see that what you just described, right? They really want to have meaningful conversations around faith and spirituality. And so I think that's part of our main purpose, is just getting them into a place like a Wesley where they can start sharing about their faith, their experiences, where they see God, do they see God, and then giving them an opportunity to grow together in that. Also, what you mentioned too about this isn't youth group 2.0, right? Again, I tell folks that in college, you are getting tested in ways that you've never been tested before on all fronts, right? Yeah. Certainly financially, as you're trying to make it through all the ramen and everything. Relationships are at an all new height, academically, mentally, and with family relationships. So if our faith is not getting tested to the same level and degree that everything else in life is getting tested at this point, then it's not going to mature and grow and develop just like everything else has had to grow and mature and develop. And the risk then is that it gets left behind. So, I think my one word would be don't count them out, right? Just because they're not in a church, they're not in a pew, they're maybe not even at a Wesley yet, they're still interested. They're still really hungry to discuss those things of which they may not fully identify with yet or know more about yet, but there's still hope. There's still time, and there's still the places to water that and grow that and help develop it.
Well, it strikes me that curiosity, right? I mean, that's the word that just kept popping in my mind as you were unpacking that, Eddie. That curiosity is a gift, right? And it's a part of who we've been as United Methodists for a very long time, right? As I reflect on my college experience, I went to Baylor, so it was a very kind of theologically unique kind of circumstance. But many of the young people around me responded to all of those, everything being up 5 levels, right? Academically, we're challenged. Financially, we're challenged. Relationally, right? We're having relationships like adults, and that's a whole different ballgame, right? With what we jokingly called in the Wesley Foundation back in the day, the Baptist phase, right? Where everybody responded to that with a push towards certainty, in the faith realm, right? But that never lasted forever, right? There's a reason why we called it the Baptist phase, right? It wasn't a forever thing. It was a season where, in response to that heightened anxiety in the system, for lack of a better phrase of talking about it, there was a response to move to a place of certainty. But if they stayed there, it often got left behind. Where are you seeing this curiosity being manifest in Denton and in the conversations you guys are cultivating?
Yeah, you mentioned people having their Baptist phase in college. And one of my predecessors in this job, we had coffee and she gave me this advice that she didn't do her big recruiting push at the beginning of the school year when everybody moved in. She did it right after the BSM had their fall retreat.
Okay.
Because that was the moment when a lot of people realized, oh, this isn't the place for me. And some people realized this place isn't safe for me even. And that's when they found the Wesley. And so she did all of her welcoming and messaging around who the Wesley is at a point that was a little bit later than everybody else did.
Yeah.
And that's one of the ways that like our Wesley Foundation, we have students from lots of different faith backgrounds, and that's actually really adds to the richness of what we're able to uncover, because I'm there and I'm a United Methodist pastor. One of my students says she's technically a United Methodist pastor because they feel a little apologetic, right? But to see how their experiences bounce off of these things that I'm really rooted in, then it helps them interpret if those things resonate with them too. And a lot of times they do. But because they get to go through that journey together and see different people that did grow up Jehovah's Witness or Baptist or a lot of things I didn't grow up as, then they're able to grow together towards something that's more life-giving and liberating. And that only happens because they get to be together, right? And in kind of the liminal space where there's not some of the same pressures as normal church life might have for, an 18 to 22-year-old.
Yeah, there's that space and that openness where all the questions. My sense is that if we come in on a Wednesday night or a Tuesday night, there's going to be an openness to it. There's, stuff's on the table, right? And there's nothing that's off the table, right? We are going to engage in a way that helps you on this journey of discernment and I think actually in many ways our Wesleyan kind of understanding of how God works in our lives, right, is actually really helpful here, right? This whole sanctifying grace piece, right, where God is working in us always in different times in different ways is actually a gift in this scenario. What other kind of Wesleyan distinctives do you guys see work out on campus that help young people, whether they started out as Methodist or whether they end up as Methodist, on this journey with God and toward God, that's happening in this time where everything is kind of elevated? Where are y'all seeing some of our Wesleyan distinctives bear fruit or be helpful or not helpful, if that's true too?
Yeah, in our context, then social holiness is one of those things that they can't believe that the church has been doing this the whole time. And learning that history, they're like, well, where was I? I want to be a part of that too. And, we have people that see the ways that we show up to our campus community and they're like, well, I thought this was a church. Like, why do you care if all the international students have enough food to eat over the break? Why do you care if we bring a hate speech speaker or not? And then they're like, aren't churches all this particular flavor? And it's like, they're not. A lot of them are, but Wesley started out in campus ministry, getting together with all of his college friends about things that they cared about. And a lot of those things were elevating poor folks, teaching people how to read, visiting people in prisons. Those are things that college students are still really passionate about now and need to access to that legacy, I think.
Yeah, I see it in similar ways. I think the Wesleyan emphasis on practice over doctrine, not to say it's not important, but that overemphasis on practice, I think allows our students to engage in something they may not readily pick on their own right away. And what I mean by that is we probably only have a third of our students are Methodist.
Okay. Yeah.
And so we've got Lutherans and Presbyterians and I think to Marianne's point as well, our job, as I see it too, in a lot of instances, is to share with students that what you understood as what it means to be Christian may not be the only way one can be Christian, right? So there are more ways than just one to be a faithful follower of Jesus.
Yeah.
And I share with them a lot too. It's Howard John Wesley that says that, my job's not to make you think what I think. My job's to make sure you're thinking. And I feel like that kind of emphasis through a Wesleyan perspective of if we're all going to share the same heart and practice our faith together, then that works beyond making sure that we all line up completely theologically together all the time.
We don't have to be all of one mind if we can be of one heart and one action, right?
Yep.
In that kind of uniform, that's not a unity that's not uniform, right? That I think that is, and when we think of kind of, if we just take what is happening on the campus and zoom out to society, how much would the world be better if many more of the people who walk in the way of Jesus, right, were able to deal with the discomfort that you guys are willing to deal with? Because I imagine that, it's one thing to sit in the closet that is the podcast studio and have a conversation among 3 Methodist clergy folks who say, we're willing to not all have to be on the same page and at the same table, and right. And that's all, because we're all committed to that, right? But I assume we've all experienced the moments where that gets awkward, right? Or that gets hard, or you've got people who are coming to the table who are of one heart, right? But hold deeply different convictions and who are wrestling their way forward, trying to make their way. But you get the unintentional comment that just leaves somebody else devastated over here, right? Where in the tradition you grew up in, this is not a thing to say this, but over here it causes harm, right? That's not the easiest thing to navigate, right? But what would the world look like if more and more of us were willing and able day by day to navigate those waters, right? To step into the uncertainty of it and be formed by conversations with people who aren't like us, right? That'd be a real gift. I was talking with one of your students recently, Eddie, and they shared with me that one of the things they love about TCU Wesley, well, they came for tailgate barbecue. Full disclosure, right? Came for tailgate barbecue and had grown up in a tradition that kind of said, this is your box, and to follow Jesus, here is your box, right? And weren't yet comfortable anymore in that space. And they said, I'm going to come and eat the good food until they try to put me in the box, and then I'm out. And they're still with you a year later. And they're advocates for others to come join you, right? Because you've created space for them to be themselves, right? While continuing to feed them good food. Right. This work is so critical, not just for today, but for tomorrow, right? Y'all named one of the realities of, because I think all of us are young-ish clergy types. Marianne's an official young clergy person. The rest of us are ish for a little bit longer. But on campus, y'all get to be the old heads. Right? What was that like the first couple of weeks on campus ministry when you go from a Methodist world where, like, frankly, if you're clergy and under 55, you are, young and vibrant and vital, and we're so glad that you're here, to, okay, old man, or old woman, what was that experience like for you guys to pivot just a little bit for us?
I had an immediate wake-up call. So I started 3 years ago when I started, I was 28. Okay. And I had been.
Sorry, Eddie, I discounted you.
It's all good.
You are probably the youngest person here.
Well, when I started at Wesley, I was 28, and previously I was out at a local church, and I was one of the younger staff members, and so I was really proud of how I could design graphics.
Oh yeah.
Over and against some of my colleagues, and so when I arrived at Wesley, I felt very confident in my skill set and ability to turn out good graphics. And I kid you not, week 1, first sermon series graphic, a student said to me, Eddie, we'll handle this. We'll do it all.
Oh, man.
Don't do anymore.
Oh.
So yeah.
The bar changed for you.
The bar changes, and we keep getting older, and the students stay the same age. They're always 18 to 22.
Yeah.
So the world just moves right in front of you. So,
and where there's better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let go. Stop doing the graphics.
Yeah. Well, and what again, as somebody who is the chief creative on their church staff and still doing graphics at nearly 40. Embrace that.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Receive that. That's a gift. Yeah. Man, what was your
Yeah.
oh man, I'm not so young anymore moment?
Oh man, I definitely got the Instagram taken away from me pretty early on. That didn't last long. But it happens every single day. One of the things in youth ministry, I used to kind of bond with students, be like, hey, I heard this new word, explain it to me. But the college students sometimes say, you don't have any business using that word.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to trace back to the original origin. Some of my students find
It's
me on
sus for you to even try.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some of my
Just like
students
that.
find me on TikTok and they're like, how precious. An attempt
Oh no.
into reaching into us. And, and I just embrace that. Like, yes, it is a precious attempt, right? Yeah. And thanks for having me, right? Like, that's one thing, is that we're kind of like a guest in this different generational space, right? Yeah. And so in some ways, I'm the pastor and I'm the one that's in charge. But in a lot of ways, I'm just there to absorb, right? All of the things that they've already built and crafted. And they're very generous hosts, I think.
Oh man, that is fantastic. Last week we spent some time talking about the Howard Thurman quote of how part of how we can raise up generations of leaders is giving them a crown to grow into. What I just heard you guys saying was the young people shrinking your crown. So it's like, no. We're just going to take that one away from you. It does not fit on your head. Let us have it. Let us own it. We appreciate your spirit. Was it like the middle-aged version of "Oh, bless your heart"? Right? Was that the response to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh goodness.
But what's interesting is, to me, those kinds of comments only come from somebody that feels ownership enough to be able to say, let me do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's that ownership of like, yeah, you may be welcome here, but I can also move the furniture. I can also rearrange things.
Yeah.
And I think about in church with young people, right? They may be welcome, but they may not feel like they have that level of ownership or ability to move furniture to tell someone, yeah, let me do that for you.
Yeah. That welcome versus belonging. Right. That so true. Because we're glad you're here versus it's yours. Mm-hmm. Where have you guys either been invited by your students or invited your students into that kind of shared place of leadership? Maybe they've trusted you with something that they haven't historically trusted folks with, or you've let go of something beyond the graphics and the, all the digital stuff that, we try, right? And I got to say, for a preacher, your TikTok's pretty good, but that's a pretty big caveat and a fairly low bar. But where's one of those spaces where either you're letting go of something to empower and equip them in ministry, or they're saying, we want to invite you into this space that you wouldn't normally otherwise be, because we trust you and we want you in this space?
One of the things we've changed recently is that our internship program, we usually have a couple of undergrad interns. Then that used to be one of them played guitar and one of them did Bible study. And what I found was people were graduating to a variety of different types of work fields and then asking me to write a reference about things that they could have tried at the Wesley, but I didn't let them. Right? I was like, they really do play guitar really great. And they're like, oh, do they know how to do donor management software? And I'm like, no, but we have one. Like, they could have learned that if that was something I knew. Yeah. So we started, I make missional priorities for the Wesley, and students give me their priorities for their learning goals. And then we put those together to find out what the intersection of that is for our internships. So now, instead of just a worship intern, like, we had an emergency management intern. And Eli just rolled up one day and he said, you know what? We are not prepared for a real disaster in this place. And he's like, and there are hazards around the building. And, this is going to be one of the places people will come for help if we have an emergency. And so it was a project that I would have never tackled or even seen how important it was. And he spent the whole semester doing that as his ministry at the Wesley.
That's
and
fantastic.
So, I had to give up a lot of my ideas about what leadership is supposed to be in a campus ministry. And and we wiggled out something really incredible that I would have never guessed on my own.
So just know, coming out of this, we are going to receive recruiting emails from churches looking for future chairs of trustees to manage all of those kind of things. So make sure we've got Eli's contact information so we can get him funneled into churches. And because that's a specific heart that says, by college internship, I want it to be around emergency management. And frankly, it's a thing that most churches stink at, right?
And in my experience, churches want nursery workers and youth directors. Nobody ever calls me asking if I'm graduating somebody that would be a great trustee. But I am. And so there's, places people can serve and lead that churches don't even think to ask if they're available.
William C. Martin in Bedford, Texas. All right. Where's one of those places where you're either letting go or being invited in?
Yeah, well, I remember being surprised early on with just how flexible students were. So coming out of local church 2020, we were always thinking about what to do, what's going to work. And I remember worrying about what the first something we were going to try at Wesley, August 2020 would be. And I was just blown away hopping on a Zoom call with our student leaders, just how flexible they were. I expected, again, maybe my own way of looking was not right. Like I expected young people, they're going to be very particular. They want it their way. It's got to look like this. But
the graphics do.
Well, and on that call, they were just, Eddie, let's try whatever. And if it doesn't work, we'll try something else. So I remember being surprised by that right away, just how flexible and ready they were. But I've also learned just how capable they are and how interested and willing they are to lead. They want to lead. There have been times where, I've had to miss a Wednesday or my parents were sick and I had to drive out of town and things. And they were so delighted to be able to take this thing and run it. And they did. Yeah. And even just, sharing back with evaluations with SPR, like they're saying, we can do more. We can do more. And so I'm surprised, and now I'm aware and learning how to let the job here, and we know this all as pastors of any kind at any location, the job here is to let go. Yeah. It's not our ministry, it's theirs, and they're better at it a lot of times.
That is such a powerful reminder, right? Because we hear we're supposed to equip the saints for the work of ministry, right? That's that's Paul for all of us, right? And yet knowing that involved at local church and in campus ministry, letting go. It involves not coming with a preconceived notion as to what somebody's gift they need to bring here. Instead saying, where's your gift and where does that align with the hopes, dreams, and expectations of the ministry, right? And how can, because I'm imagining Eli felt set alive, right? All right. Rather than saying, all right, we're going to actually need you to learn how to play guitar for the next 6 months. Because, that's not easy. Or maybe it is easy. I don't know. It's been terribly difficult for me. I've learned the same 3 chords 5 times. But to set people alive, right? To truly look them in the eye and go, where's your heart? Where's this? And how can we set that, unleash that for the kingdom, for the work of God in our midst in ways that leads to transformation. As we're wrapping up today, I want to just make one fun note. I have to say, you guys are innovators in a lot of different places, but one of the places where innovation happens in the most humorous way in campus ministry is how do we fund things? So one of the things that you guys do again and again is always come up with something creative or interesting. I can't tell you how many times back in the day, the Baylor TCU rivalry game, right, was not just a source of deep anxiety in my spirit and on a Saturday, but also a real lightener of my wallet, right, on the 61-58 game back in the day, right? What are some ways that you guys have approached this in a creative spirit because financial support of ongoing ministry, especially at our Wesley Foundations, is a real thing. And yes, we encourage people to cook meals whenever they're called upon and things, but that's also another financially is another way people can support you guys. What is the most creative thing you've tried and it worked, and the most creative thing you've tried and it bombed and did not work? As we wrap up.
Well, we celebrated 50 years of the Denton Wesley Foundation, right when I got there. Yeah. And so one of the things the students were really passionate about doing that I did not think was going to work was they wanted our fundraising theme to be the last 50 years, the next 50 years. And so they took all these old Wesley photos from the 70s and they recreated them. And so like the haircuts are different, but like some of the couches are the same. And like this tree that was small, now it's really big. And a lot of them got to be really silly and really ridiculous. But our alumni really love to see those moments being connected with each other.
Yeah.
And so for North Texas Giving Day, one day we did that. And it was a lot more fun than I thought it would be.
Very good.
Yeah.
I knew I was here to steal ideas, so that's one. We're celebrating 75 years at TCU Wesley this year, so we're going to definitely be recreating some photos.
There you go.
So actually, one of the things that has gone well is our board of directors have really taken a lead on an auction every spring.
Nice.
And it's completely virtual by nature of what we had to do at the time. But what's been interesting is we've gotten to know and partner with some local businesses and entrepreneurs, and it has involved churches, and we've gotten to know folks at local congregations that may have, exciting lake houses or opportunities to kind of offer. And that's just been like a win-win because we engage with churches, we engage with the community, and it's raised some money that helps make the budget.
Hey, that's good. That's good. Spencer Baker
Yes.
has made some stuff for you, and all his stuff is always fantastic. And I'm trying to talk him into some Baylor themed stuff.
No.
But
He made a Hypnotoad serving board this year. It was the coolest thing. Yeah.
and brought pretty good money.
Yes. Yeah.
It captured the ethos of TCU fandom.
Yep.
Well, very good. Eddie, thank you so much for being here. Marianne, thank you so much for being here. As we wrap up, what's the one thing that people need to hear about what God is doing on our campus ministries today that you just, we haven't had a chance to say today that, we'd be stupid to leave here without saying, and that you just want to kind of shout out for everybody to have a chance to hear and know and celebrate with you in this time?
One thing I think is that every church has a role in campus ministry. You might not be able to cut a big check on your yearly budget. You might not even have enough people to bring out casseroles a couple times a semester, although a lot of you do. But you might, if you are worshiping like 10 people, that might be a perfect place for one of my interns to come preach their first sermon, right?
Yeah.
And so, don't discount what you have to offer. And just reach out and we'll see how we can do good ministry together.
Perfect.
Yeah, the one logistical thing I would share is when your seniors graduate, connect them to the campus ministry at that university.
Yeah.
You put so much energy and soul into developing that youth or that kid that's grown up through church. Take it the next step. Make sure it doesn't end there.
Yeah.
Right? And then I think just also I would add that, campus ministry is always going to be a missional investment, and you may not see the returns as a local church immediately, but you are investing in a ministry that's going to raise up leaders, both lay and clergy, for the local church, and you're trusting that people in Oregon and Maine and Massachusetts and Nebraska are all doing the same, so that when their students move to Texas and need a church, in Central Texas, North Texas, that they will have a place to serve. And then you can deploy those students that can lead the church in other areas too. So you may not see, the people in your pews that Sunday because you brought a meal the previous Wednesday, but you're pouring into something bigger, and God does the rest. So.
Amen. Well, thank you both for joining us here today on Pod Strangely Warmed, and thank you for being here with us on Pod Strangely Warmed this week. It has been a fantastic conversation as we get ready for the start of school and hear stories from our amazing campus ministers. If there's something you've wondered about campus ministry but never had the opportunity to ask, drop it in one of our comments and we'll make sure we catch it in one of our future conversations with our campus ministry folks so that we might know more, so that we might be more invested, and that we might be a part of the planting and the watering that God is doing in and through our ministry to young people, so that God's future might be bright and beautiful, and that we, as the people called Methodist, might get to be a part of it. Until next time, I'm Daniel Hawkins. Thanks again for being here.